The night Elara Westbrook was sent to return her sister's engagement ring, she knew she was not being sent as a daughter. She was being sent as damage control. The ring sat inside a velvet box on her lap, black as midnight and heavier than any jewel had a right to be. It was a sapphire, deep blue, cold and flawless, surrounded by diamonds small enough to look delicate and sharp enough to resemble teeth. Her sister Celeste had worn it for exactly 6 weeks before she threw it at the Duke of Frostmere in front of half the county and declared that she would rather die. Unmarried than belong to a man whose household had tried to ruin her. That was the story society had heard. It was not the truth. Elara sat alone in the carriage, one hand resting on the velvet box, the other folded tightly over a letter hidden beneath the seam of her glove. The letter was not supposed to exist. It had been tucked behind the false drawer of her father's writing desk, folded twice, sealed once, then broken open by hands that had clearly shaken while reading it. Her father's hands, Elara suspected, but he had not burned it. That had been his mistake. Outside, rain moved across the window glass in silver lines, turning the road to Frostmere House into a dark ribbon under the carriage wheels. Elara watched the countryside pass without really seeing it. She had lived 24 years being told she had no talent for drama, no gift for beauty, no useful softness that could charm a room into forgiving her. Celeste had beauty. Celeste had laughter. Celeste had the sort of golden brightness people mistook for goodness because it was easier than looking closely. Elara had ledgers, patience, and a memory that rarely forgot the shape of a lie. Her mother had called that unfortunate. Her father had called it inconvenient. Tonight, for the first time in her life, Elara wondered if it might be enough. The instructions had been simple. She was to arrive at Frostmere House before the winter assembly began. She was to request a private audience with His Grace, Nathaniel Ashburn, Duke of Frostmere. She was to return the ring. She was to express, with humility and restraint, that Lady Celeste Westbrook regretted the pain caused by their broken engagement, though she was still too distressed to appear in person. Most importantly, Elara was not to mention Lord Sebastian Ashburn. That was what her mother had said twice, while fastening borrowed pearl drops into Amra's ears. "Do not speak his brother's name," Lady Westbrook had whispered, her perfume too sweet and her fingers too cold. "The Duke is already insulted enough. We do not need you making this uglier." Elara had looked at her mother in the mirror and asked, "Uglier for whom?" Lady Westbrook's hand had stilled. Then she had said, "For us, Elara, for your family. Surely, even you understand that much, even you." It had followed Elara into the carriage like a second passenger. Frostmere House appeared at the top of a long hill, lit against the storm, a ship refusing to sink. Every window glowed amber. Carriages lined the circular drive. Footmen moved beneath black umbrellas. Music drifted faintly through the rain, elegant and distant, as if laughter itself had been trained to behave politely inside those walls. Amra's carriage stopped. No one came immediately to help her down. She waited 3 breaths, then opened the door herself. The nearest footman startled, as though a woman stepping out of a carriage without assistance was a minor rebellion. He offered his hand too late. Elara accepted it anyway, because pride did not require theatrical waste, and because the front steps were slick with rain. Inside, Frostmere House was warmer than she expected and far less welcoming. Conversations did not stop when she entered. That would have been too obvious. Instead, they thinned. Heads turned by small degrees, fans lifted, mouths bent toward ears. The name Westbrook passed through the hall on a murmur soft enough to deny and clear enough to wound. Elara kept walking. She wore a pale grey gown that had once belonged to Celeste, altered at the shoulders and let down at the hem. The colour did nothing for her. According to her mother, it made her look subdued. According to Celeste, Elara had chosen it anyway because subdued was useful when one wished to be underestimated. At the far end of the entrance hall, beneath a portrait of some long-dead Ashburn ancestor who looked as if he had personally invented disapproval, stood the Duke of Frostmere. Nathaniel Ashburn was not the sort of man a room overlooked. He was tall, dark-haired, and still in a way that made everyone around him seem louder than they were. He wore black evening clothes without ornament, except for a silver watch chain and the white flash of his cuffs. His face was handsome, but not in the polished, easy way fashionable men tried to be handsome. There was something severe in him, something controlled, something that suggested he had long ago learned the course of showing surprise. He saw Amara before the footman announced her. His gaze moved once over her face, then to the velvet box in her hands. No expression crossed his features. That was somehow worse than anger. "Miss Westbrook," he said. His voice was calm enough to make the air around it colder. "Your Grace," Amara curtsied. "Thank you for receiving me. I was told Lady Celeste was too unwell to travel. She's too unwell to do many things that require consequence." The words left Amara before caution could stop them. A flicker moved through the Duke's eyes. Not amusement, exactly. Interest, perhaps, though it vanished quickly. "Come," he said. "There is a room where we may speak before the assembly begins." A few women nearby leaned closer to one another. Amara felt their attention on her back as she followed him through the hall. It did not feel like being watched. It felt like being measured for how neatly she might break. The Duke led her into a library lined with dark shelves and lit by a low fire. Rain tapped against the windows. On the desk near the hearth sat a stack of letters, bound in black ribbon. Amara saw them and understood at once that this man had not spent the past 2 weeks waiting helplessly for apologies. He had been gathering ammunition. The Duke closed the door. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Amara placed the velvet box on the desk. "My sister asked me to return this." "Did she?" "No." Amara met his eyes. "My mother asked me to say that she did." Silence settled between them. The Duke looked at the box, then back at her. "You begin strangely for someone sent to ask forgiveness." "I was not sent to ask forgiveness, Your Grace. I was sent to make forgiveness cheaper." That time, his expression changed. "Not much, but enough." "You understand your family's position is precarious," he said. "I understand it better than they think I do." "And yet you came." "Yes." "Why?" Amara could have given the answer her mother had prepared. She could have spoken of regret, distress, misunderstandings, youthful panic, the difficulty of emotion, the tragedy of wounded pride between 2 noble houses. She knew all the phrases. She had heard them rehearsed in the breakfast room, until they sounded like lace thrown over rot. Instead, she touched the hidden letter beneath her glove and said, "Because your brother did not do what my sister accused him of doing." The Duke went very still. Outside the library, the distant music swelled, then softened again. "Be careful, Miss Westbrook. I intend to be precise." His eyes sharpened. "Do you know what your sister accused Lord Sebastian of?" "Yes. She told half the room at Lady Pembridge's supper that he intercepted her private letters, threatened to expose her, and tried to force her into fleeing the engagement so the Ashburn family could keep her dowry without a marriage." The Duke's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Amara continued, "She also implied that you knew of it." "She did more than imply. I know. And you were prepared to contradict her." "I am prepared to tell you that the accusation is false." The Duke stepped closer to the desk, though not closer to her. "How?" Amara drew the folded letter from beneath her glove. It was not large. It was not dramatic. It was simply paper, creased and handled. But the Duke looked at it as though she had placed a blade between them. "I found this in my father's desk," she said. "It is from Lord Percival wrote to my sister. My family believes I do not enter my father's study unless asked. They are wrong." Nathaniel did not reach for the letter immediately. "Why bring this to me?" "Because I know what it means to be blamed for another person's convenience." That was the first honest thing she had said that felt dangerous. The Duke took the letter. He read it once, then again. The fire snapped quietly behind him. Amara watched his face while he read. He revealed very little, but the little he revealed mattered. A tightening around the mouth, a deepening stillness, a kind of contained fury that did not explode because it had too much discipline to waste itself on spectacle. The letter was not romantic, not really. That made it worse. Percival Rowe had not written like a man in love. He had written like a man arranging an escape route. Celeste was to meet him at the old toll house after Lady Pembroke's supper. She was to bring the emerald necklace their mother had given her. If anyone discovered them, she was to say Lord Sebastian had intercepted their letters first. Roe had even written the phrase clearly, "Let the younger Ashburn take the disgrace. He has little enough reputation to defend, and your Duke will pay well to bury it." When Nathaniel finished reading, he folded the letter with excessive care. "My brother has not left his rooms in 11 days, he said quietly. "He's 19. Amara closed her eyes for half a second. 19. She had known Sebastian was young. She had not realized he was that young. "I am sorry," she said. The Duke's gaze lifted to hers. "Are you?" "Yes. But I know that does not repair anything." "No," he said. "It does not. I did not know about the letter until tonight. But your father did." "Yes. And he sent you here with the ring instead of the truth." "Yes." The Duke turned away, looking toward the window. Rain slid down the glass in trembling lines. His reflection appeared there, pale and dark at once. "Your sister destroyed an engagement," he said. "That would have been embarrassing, unpleasant, expensive, but survivable. Then she chose to save herself by placing my brother's name in the dirt where every bored person in London could step on it." Amara felt the words land in her chest with a heaviness that did not belong to her and yet somehow did. "Your Grace, if you wish to expose this letter publicly, I will not deny where it came from." His head turned slowly. "You understand what that would do to you?" "Yes. Your family would say you stole it. They may. They would say you forged it. They might try. They would cut you off." Amara looked down at her borrowed gown, her borrowed earrings, the slippers Celeste had worn once and discarded because the ribbons pinched. Then she looked back at him. "With respect, Your Grace, one must possess a place before one can be cut off from it." For the first time, Nathaniel Ashburn had no immediate reply. The silence that followed was not empty. It was the strange, suspended silence that came when one person finally saw the outline of another person's life and understood that polite language had been hiding cruelty all along. Then someone knocked. The door opened before the Duke answered. Lady Westbrook stepped in. Amra's mother was smiling, which meant she was furious. She wore garnet silk and a face arranged into maternal concern. Behind her, in the hallway, Amara glimpsed Lady Marwood and two other women pretending not to listen. "There you are," Lady Westbrook said, to Brightly. "Your Grace, forgive the interruption. I feared Amara might have overwhelmed you with details. She can be rather earnest when nervous." Amara felt the old instinct rise automatically. Apologize, soften, make it easier for everyone. She folded her hands instead. The Duke's expression did not change. "Miss Westbrook has been remarkably clear." "How fortunate," Lady Westbrook said. Her eyes flicked to Amara, sharp as pins. "My dear, the assembly is beginning. You have done what was required. We should not impose." "Not quite," the Duke said. Lady Westbrook paused. "Your Grace." Nathaniel held up the folded letter. Amara watched the blood leave her mother's face. It was a small thing, only a fraction of color lost beneath powder and candlelight, but Amara saw it. She always saw the small things. She had built a life out of noticing what others expected her to miss. "What is that?" Lady Westbrook asked. "A letter," the Duke said. "One I believe you recognize." "Amara," her mother whispered. There it was. Not fear for the truth. Fear that Amara had stopped obeying. The Duke looked between them, then moved to the door and opened it wider. The women outside scattered with embarrassing slowness. "Lady Westbrook," he said, loud enough for the corridor to hear. "You will allow your daughter to remain at Harrowmere this evening as my guest." Lady Westbrook's smile trembled. "Your Grace, that is impossible. Few things are impossible. This is merely inconvenient. She came only to return a ring. She has returned more than that." Amara could feel the household listening now. Servants, guests, curious friends of curious friends, all pretending to look at paintings or gloves or nothing at all. Her mother knew it too. That was the cruelty of public rooms. They punished honesty, but they also punished visible panic. Lady Westbrook turned to Amara. "You will come with me." For 24 years, Amara had obeyed that tone, not because it was right, because obedience had always seemed less costly than resistance. Tonight, she thought of Sebastian Ashburn, 19 and hidden in his rooms, because her sister had found him useful to destroy. She thought of Celeste resting at home with lavender compresses and breakfast trays, while other people carried the weight of her escape. She thought of the letter under her father's hand, read and hidden. Because truth was expensive and daughters were cheaper. "No," Amara said. The word did not sound dramatic. It sounded calm. That made it feel stronger. Lady Westbrook stared at her. "Excuse me, I will not leave yet. You have forgotten yourself." "No," Amara said, and the shape of the truth settled inside her like a key turning. "I think I have remembered myself rather late." The Duke looked at her then, not with pity, not with amusement, with attention. Lady Westbrook's face hardened. "Your father will hear of this. I expect he will hear of many things by morning." A murmur moved through the corridor. Lady Westbrook heard it, measured the room, and chose retreat because defeat was less damaging when it could be renamed dignity. She curtsied to the Duke, ignored Amara entirely, and left the library with her head high enough to suggest she believed pasture could replace power. When she was gone, Amara became suddenly aware of her own breathing. The Duke closed the door again. "You have made yourself an enemy," he said. I had the uncomfortable realization that she already was one. He studied her for a long moment. "There is a smaller room beside the ballroom where my aunt receives guests she does not like. It has excellent tea and no one under 70. You may wait there if you do not wish to enter the assembly." Amara almost smiled. "Almost. That sounds peaceful." "It is intolerable." "Then I would rather enter the assembly." His brows lifted slightly. "You understand they will stare. They stared when I was obedient. At least this time they will have reason." Something like approval moved through his face, brief but unmistakable. He offered his arm. Amara looked at it. Then she looked at him. "Your Grace, if you escort me into that room, they will assume something. They already assume everything." Accuracy would be a refreshing change. A warmth moved through Amara before she could stop it. Not romance, not yet. Something more dangerous. The first strange relief of being spoken to, as though she were not fragile, foolish, or invisible. She placed her hand on his arm. The ballroom did not fall silent when they entered. It did something better. It failed at pretending not to. The music wavered for half a bar. Fans paused mid-air. A gentleman near the punch table forgot to finish laughing. Lady Marwood, who had always treated scandal like theatre provided for her personal enrichment, looked from Amra's face to the Duke's arm, or understood she had missed a scene. Amara walked beside Nathaniel Ashburn beneath the chandeliers, aware of every glance, every whisper, every calculation being rewritten in real time. Then she saw him. Lord Sebastian Ashburn stood near the far wall, half hidden behind a marble column. He was younger than she expected, thinner than he should have been, with the same dark hair as his brother, but none of his armor. His face was pale. His expression held the exhausted pride of someone who had been told not to show pain, because pain would give his enemies satisfaction. Beside him stood an older woman with silver hair and a cane, the Duchess Dowager of Frostmere. She looked at Amara as though she were deciding whether to forgive her for existing. Nathaniel guided Amara toward them. "Sebastian," he said. "Miss Westbrook wished to speak with you." Sebastian's face tightened. Amara released the Duke's arm and curtsied. "My lord," she said, "I owe you an apology that should have been given by someone else, and I will not insult you by pretending that makes it sufficient." Sebastian blinked. The Duchess Dowager's cane tapped once against the floor. Amara continued, keeping her voice low but clear. "My sister's accusation was false. I have given your brother proof of that. I am sorry for the damage done to your name, and for the cowardice that allowed it to continue after the truth was known." Sebastian stared at her. He looked so young in that moment that Amara felt a sharp ache behind her ribs. "Your family knows?" he asked. "Yes, all of them. My father knows enough. My mother suspects enough. Celeste knows entirely. His mouth twisted. Of course she does. I cannot undo what she said, Amara told him, but I will not deny what I know if asked. The Duchess Dowager watched her carefully. That is an expensive promise, Miss Westbrook. Yes, Your Grace. Do you often make expensive promises? No, Amara said. I have not often been able to afford them. The Duchess's gaze rested on her for another second. Then, with the smallest shift in her expression, she said, Nathaniel, your guest is pale. Bring her something stronger than tea. It was not affection, but it was permission. For the next hour, Amara stood in the ballroom as the story around her changed shape. Not all at once. Society rarely surrendered a narrative without first attempting to chew it into a more entertaining form. But the Duke did not leave her alone. The Duchess Dowager spoke to her twice. Sebastian remained visible, and Lady Marwood, sensing that the wind had changed direction, began telling people she had always thought Celeste Westbrook's distress seemed rather rehearsed. By midnight, 3 facts had reached every corner of the room. Miss Amara Westbrook had brought a letter. The Duke of Harrowmere had read it, and Lady Westbrook had left without her daughter. That last detail pleased people most, because nothing delighted society like evidence that a family scandal had become a family war. Amara did not return home that night. The Duchess Dowager insisted she remain at Harrowmere because the roads were flooded, though the roads had been no worse when Amara arrived. A room was prepared. A maid brought warm water and a nightdress so fine Amara hesitated before touching it. When she was finally alone, she sat on the edge of the bed and looked at her hands. They were steady now. That frightened her more than trembling would have. At dawn, a note arrived from her father. It contained no greeting. You will return immediately. You have misunderstood matters beyond your station. Bring no further disgrace upon this family. Amara read it once. Then she folded it neatly and set it beside the untouched breakfast tray. An hour later, Nathaniel Ashburn requested permission to see her in the morning room. Permission. The word struck her strangely. Her family commanded. The Duke asked. She found him standing beside the window, dressed for riding though rain still threatened the sky. He turned when she entered, and for the first time since she had met him, his face looked tired. I received a letter from your father, he said. So did I. I imagine yours was less polite. Mine did not trouble itself with politeness. The corner of his mouth moved. Mine attempted it and failed. Amara looked toward the window. The gardens beyond were silver with rain. What will happen now? With the letter, with everything. Nathaniel did not answer quickly. She liked that about him, though she did not yet want to like anything about him. He treated questions as things deserving weight, not obstacles to be stepped over. I will speak with Roe, he said. If he denies the letter, I will have the handwriting verified. If he panics, which seems more likely, he will attempt to bargain. Either way, my brother's name will be cleared, and my sister. That depends on how loudly your family chooses to lie. Amara breathed out slowly. They will lie loudly. I suspected as much. My father cannot afford to have Celeste ruined. He built every future plan around her marriage. To me, yes. Then he planned badly. There was no vanity in the statement, only fact. Amara almost laughed, but the sound would have come too close to breaking. Nathaniel saw it anyway. You have somewhere to go, he asked. The question was practical, but gentle enough to hurt. Amara thought of home, not as a place of comfort, but as a house full of rooms where she had learned to make herself useful enough to be tolerated. She thought of her mother's voice, her father's disappointment, Celeste's wounded astonishment when consequences reached her at last. No, Amara said. Not really. The Duke nodded once. My aunt has offered you the blue room until arrangements can be made. That is generous. It is tactical. She dislikes your mother. That time, Amara did laugh. It surprised them both. The sound was small, and it ended quickly. But for a moment something in Nathaniel's face softened in response. Amara looked away first, not because she was embarrassed, but because she was unprepared for kindness that did not announce itself. For 3 days, Harrowmere became the center of a storm. Letters arrived. Servants carried trays through halls thick with rumor. Gentlemen called under the excuse of concern. Ladies called under the excuse of friendship. Nathaniel refused most of them. The Duchess Dowager received the rest and emerged from each visit with the refreshed expression of a general who enjoyed war more than she admitted. Amara spent the days in the library, not hiding, working. Nathaniel had discovered, by some combination of observation and audacity, that she understood accounts. The Frostmere estate ledgers had been neglected during the scandal, and Amara, who had managed her father's household books for 7 years without anyone considering the skill worthy of praise, found herself seated at a large mahogany table with ink on her fingers and 3 estate stewards looking at her as if she were a natural disaster. "This grain entry is wrong," she said on the second morning. The oldest steward stiffened. "Miss Westbrook, that account has been checked." "By whom?" "By Mr. Vale." Mr. Vale added the same delivery twice and subtracted the tax once. "Either he is careless, or someone is stealing from your western farms." The steward looked offended. Nathaniel, standing near the hearth, looked interested. "Can you prove that?" he asked. Amara turned the ledger toward him and pointed. "Here. The wagon number repeats. The weather notation is identical. The ink pressure changes after the total." Someone adjusted the page after the original entry. The room went quiet. The eldest steward leaned closer. Then he said, very quietly, "Good Lord." Nathaniel's gaze moved from the ledger to Amra's face. "You see all that at once?" "No," she said. "I see what does not belong." "Then I ask why it was allowed to stay there." The sentence lingered longer than she intended. By the end of the week, the Western farm theft was confirmed. Lord Percival Rowe had vanished from London, and the Westbrook family had begun spreading a new story. Amara, they said, had become unstable. The shock of Celeste's broken engagement had unsettled her mind. Her attachment to the Duke was inappropriate. Her resentment of her beautiful sister had curdled into cruelty. She had stolen a private letter, perhaps altered it, perhaps invented parts of it entirely, and fled to Frostmere House in a desperate attempt to secure the Duke's protection. It was an ugly story. It was also clever. People were often more willing to believe a quiet woman secretly bitter than a beautiful woman openly selfish. Amara read the first printed hint of it in a society paper, while seated beside the morning fire. The article did not name her. It did not need to. It spoke of a certain overlooked daughter, a certain noble house, a certain gentleman whose grief had made him vulnerable to feminine manipulation. She set the paper down carefully. Nathaniel reached for it, read the column, and went very still. "I will have my solicitor address this." "No," Amara said. His eyes lifted. She was surprised by her own certainty. "If you answer it for me, they will say that proves the article true. They will say I have persuaded you to defend me." "I do not particularly care what they say, I know," Amara said. "That is one of the luxuries of being a duke." His expression changed, not with anger, but with recognition. She continued more softly. "I care because I have lived inside what people say. Women like me do not get to ignore reputation. We either survive it, or we are buried under it." Nathaniel set the paper down. "What do you want to do?" No one had asked her that during the scandal. No one had asked her that during her life. Not in any way that mattered. The question opened a space in the room that she did not know how to fill at first. Then she said, "I want the truth made public by someone who cannot be accused of wanting me protected. Sebastian. He's too young. And they will say he is obeying you, my aunt. They will say she hates my mother. She does. That does not make her ideal." Nathaniel considered. "Rowe. If he can be found, he can." The way he said it should have sounded arrogant. Instead, it sounded inevitable. Percival Rowe was found 2 days later at an inn near Dover, trying to book passage to Calais under a name so poorly chosen that even the innkeeper had remembered it. He returned to London not in chains, because the English were civilized about ruining people, but in the custody of debt, fear, and several men who worked for Nathaniel Ashburn. Rowe broke faster than Amara expected. He admitted the letter. He admitted the affair with Celeste. He admitted that Celeste had invented Lord Sebastian's involvement before anyone else could expose her escape. But he also claimed one more thing that turned the scandal from cruel to dangerous. Lord Westbrook had known of Celeste's plan before Lady Pembridge's supper. He had allowed it. Worse, he had encouraged it. Because if the Ashburn family could be blamed for the broken engagement, the Westbrooks might keep the first portion of the marriage settlement already advanced to them. The money was gone. Amara heard this in Nathaniel's study, standing near the desk where Rose signed confession beside the original letter. For a moment, the room seemed to tilt. She had expected selfishness. She had expected cowardice. She had expected her father to hide the truth after the damage was done. She had not expected him to help arrange the damage. Nathaniel watched her across the desk. He did not touch her. She was grateful for that. If he had been gentle then, she might have shattered. "My father sold Sebastian's name for money," she said. "Yes." The simplicity of his answer steadied her more than comfort would have. Amara looked at the confession. "Then it has to be public." "It will be." "No," she said. "Not only through your solicitor, not only in letters between men who can soften the edges. It has to be said in a room where everyone who enjoyed the lie can hear the cost of it." Nathaniel's gaze sharpened. "There is a charitable musicale at Lady Marwood's tomorrow," he said. Amara almost smiled. "Of course there is. She helped carry the first version of the story. Then she can host the correction. It will be unpleasant. It has already been unpleasant. I would prefer useful." He looked at her for a long moment, and something in his face shifted. Not admiration exactly. Something more intimate, because it was quieter. "You are braver than they deserved," he said. Amara looked down at the confession. "No, I am angrier than they expected." The next evening, Amara returned to society not as a sacrifice, but as a witness. Lady Marwood's drawing room glittered with candles and malice. A soprano stood near the pianoforte, pretending she did not know that no one had come for music. Celeste was there in pale blue, looking wounded and luminous, surrounded by women eager to believe that beauty and innocence were natural companions. Lady Westbrook stood beside her, one hand resting protectively on Celeste's arm. Lord Westbrook stood near the mantel with the expression of a man who had decided denial could be mistaken for dignity if worn long enough. When Amara entered on the arm of the Duke of Harrowmere, the room changed. This time, it did fall silent. Celeste saw her first. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. "Amara," she said softly, as if greeting a ghost that had failed to stay buried. "Celeste." Lady Westbrook stepped forward. "This is not the place." Amara looked around the crowded room. Lady Marwood, pretending horror. Lord Ashby, curious. Mrs. Vale, whispering behind a fan. The soprano, still clutching her sheet music as though song might save her. "I think," Amara said, "this is exactly the place." A murmur moved through the room. Lord Westbrook's voice cut through it. "You will not make a spectacle of this family." Amara turned to him. 4 years, she had mistaken his disappointment for authority. Now she saw it clearly. It was only fear wearing a father's face. "No," she said. "You did that before I arrived." Celeste inhaled sharply. Lady Westbrook whispered, "Amara, stop." But Amara had spent too many years stopping before she embarrassed them, stopping before she contradicted them, stopping before she wanted too much, asked too directly, noticed too loudly, or made anyone uncomfortable with the simple inconvenience of being right. She was finished stopping. Nathaniel did not speak. He stood beside her, not in front of her. That mattered more than she could have explained. Amara drew a folded paper from her reticule. "This is Lord Percival Rowe's signed confession," she said. "It confirms that my sister planned to flee her engagement with him. It confirms that Lord Sebastian Ashburn did not intercept her letters, threaten her, or conspire with his brother against her. It confirms that his name was used because my sister and Lord Rowe believed he was young enough, quiet enough, and vulnerable enough to be sacrificed." Sebastian, standing near the back of the room beside the Duchess Dowager, went very pale, but he did not look away. Celeste laughed once. It was a delicate sound, almost convincing. Amara has always been dramatic in private, she said. I suppose we are all now being punished for not noticing. A few people shifted uncomfortably, grateful for the invitation to doubt. Amara looked at her sister, and for one strange second, she felt grief. Not for Celeste as she was, for the girl Amara had once tried to protect. The beautiful sister who had cried over broken ribbons, stolen gloves, unsuitable flowers, and every small inconvenience as if pain was something only she had invented. Amara had mistaken selfishness for softness for too long. No, Amara said. You are not being punished because I was unnoticed. You are being answered because Sebastian was harmed. Celeste's face changed, only slightly, but enough. Lord Westbrook moved forward. That document is meaningless. Obtained under pressure, no doubt. Nathaniel spoke then. Careful, Westbrook. 2 words. The room chilled. Lord Westbrook looked at him. Your Grace, surely you understand that my daughter has been under emotional strain. Amara is not well. There it was, the new lie, carried into the room like a second knife. Amara felt the old fear rise, not because she believed him, but because she knew how easily rooms believed fathers. Men with grey hair and titles could call women unstable, and the world would nod thoughtfully as if cruelty sounded wiser in a masculine voice. Then Sebastian stepped forward. His voice shook once, then steadied. I am not unwell, he said, and she is telling the truth. Everyone turned. Sebastian swallowed, but continued. I stayed silent because I was ashamed, not because I had done what they said, but because everyone looked at me as if I might have. Miss Westbrook came to me when no one required her to, and she apologized for a lie she did not tell. If you want to doubt someone, doubt those who benefited from my silence. The Duchess Dowager's eyes shone, though her face remained stern. Amara felt something in her chest loosen. Then Lady Marwood, sensing history approaching and preferring to stand on the winning side of it, said, I would like to hear the confession. Of course she would. Lady Marwood loved a scandal most when she could pretend it was justice. Nathaniel took the paper from Amara, but before he could read, she placed a hand lightly over his. May I? He looked at her. Then he gave it back. Amara read Rose's confession aloud. Her voice did not shake. Not when the room heard Celeste's name. Not when Roe admitted their plan. Not when the words named Lord Westbrook as aware of the accusation before it was made. By the end, Lady Westbrook was crying quietly. Celeste was not crying at all. That was how Amara knew her sister understood the danger. Lord Westbrook had gone grey. This is a family matter, he said. No, Nathaniel replied. It became a public matter when your family made my brother's innocence a public casualty. Lord Westbrook looked around the room, searching for allies and finding only witnesses. Celeste turned to Amara then, and the hatred in her face was so naked that several women looked away. You think he sees you? Celeste whispered, but the room was quiet enough to hear. You think standing beside a duke makes you important? Amara felt Nathaniel move beside her, but she answered before he could. No, she said. I think telling the truth makes me free. Whether anyone sees me after that is their choice. The words settled over the room. Celeste had no answer for them. That was the moment Amara knew it was over. Not because the damage had vanished. It had not. Reputations did not heal cleanly. Families did not apologize simply because truth cornered them. People who enjoyed lies rarely thanked the person who removed them. But the shape of the story had changed beyond repair. Sebastian Ashburn was no longer the villain. Celeste Westbrook was no longer the victim. Lord Westbrook was no longer merely an embarrassed father. And Amara was no longer the quiet daughter sent to carry the shame home in a velvet box. She left Lady Marwood's house before supper. Nathaniel followed her onto the terrace, where the cold evening air smelled of wet stone and winter roses. Behind them, the drawing room buzzed with the furious hunger of people rearranging what they believed 5 minutes earlier. Amara stood by the balustrade and drew in one careful breath, then another. The sky was dark, but the rain had stopped. Are you all right? Nathaniel asked. No. He accepted that without flinching. After a moment, Amara added, but I think I will be." He came to stand beside her, close enough that she felt his warmth, not so close that she had to decide what it meant. "You are magnificent," he said. She let out a quiet breath that was almost a laugh. "That is a generous word for furious. I have seen fury. It is rarely so well organized." This time she did smile. Only faintly, only for a moment, but Nathaniel saw it, and the look in his eyes changed with such careful tenderness that Amra's heart became suddenly unsteady. "I need to ask you something," he said. "If it is whether I regret it, no, it is not. If it is whether I knew Celeste would hate me, yes, it is not that either." She turned to him. For once, the Duke of Haramir looked uncertain. It made him seem younger, not weak, more real. "My aunt has offered you a place at Haramir for as long as you need it," he said. "Sebastian wants you to know that if anyone speaks against you, he will contradict them personally. My solicitor will ensure your father cannot touch whatever portion of your mother's settlement may legally belong to you." "That is very kind. That is logistics." Amara waited. Nathaniel looked toward the garden, then back at her. "I would like to court you," he said. The words were simple, too simple for the way they struck her. Amara stared at him. In another woman's story, perhaps, this would have been the moment where music swelled and the world became soft around the edges. But Amra's life had not taught her to trust sudden rescue. It had taught her to inspect gifts for hidden costs. "Why?" she asked. Nathaniel did not appear offended. That, too, mattered. "Because you are honest when honesty costs you," he said. "Because you understand accounts better than my steward. Because my brother stood straighter tonight after you spoke. Because you do not flatter me. And I find I have grown tired of rooms full of people who do." "That sounds like respect." "It is, and affection." His gaze held hers. "That is growing faster than is convenient." Amara looked away. The terrace blurred for a moment, not with tears exactly, but with the pressure of feeling too much too late. She thought of all the years she had spent believing love was something given to women, like Celeste, and usefulness was what remained for women like her. Then she thought of the library, the ledger, the way Nathaniel had stood beside her and not in front of her, the way he had asked what she wanted to do. "I do not want gratitude dressed as romance," she said. "Neither do I. I do not want to become another solution to an Ashburn problem." "You are not a solution," Nathaniel said. "You are a person. I am asking for the privilege of proving that I know the difference." Amara looked at him then. The cold air moved between them. Inside, society continued devouring the wreckage. Outside, for the first time in her memory, Amara felt no need to make herself smaller. "You may court me," she said, slowly. A rare smile touched his face. "Slowly," he agreed. "And honestly, always. And if your aunt intends to train me like a political weapon, I reserve the right to refuse embroidery." His smile deepened. "My aunt considers embroidery a poor substitute for influence. Then we may get along." "She already likes you." "She does not." "No," Nathaniel admitted. "But she has decided you are useful, which is her preferred form of affection." Amara laughed again, and this time the sound did not frighten her. 6 months later, the wedding took place in the chapel at Haramir, beneath windows that caught the morning light and broke it into blue and gold across the stone floor. By then, society had done what society always did. It had adjusted. Lord Westbrook had retired to the country under the excuse of poor health, though everyone knew poor judgment had carried him there. Lady Westbrook wrote Amara 3 letters, each less commanding than the last. Amara answered the third, briefly and without apology. Celeste married no one that season. Percival Rowe left England after settling debts that did not fully explain his departure. Sebastian Ashburn returned to public life slowly. He still spoke less than other young men, but he no longer entered rooms like someone bracing for accusation. On the morning of the wedding, he gave Amara a small ivory-handled letter opener and told her, awkwardly, that every dangerous woman should have a proper blade for correspondence. The Duchess Dowager approved the gift. Nathaniel did not, but only because he claimed it encouraged Amra's worst habits. Amara told him her worst habits had proven useful. He could not argue. She walked down the chapel aisle without her father. That choice caused conversation, but not enough to wound her. The Duchess Dowager had offered to escort her, with the air of someone proposing an act of war. Amara had thanked her and declined. In the end, she walked alone, not because no one would stand with her, because she could. Nathaniel waited at the altar in dark blue, his expression composed for the benefit of the room and entirely readable to her now. His eyes found hers, and the steadiness there was not possession, not triumph, not rescue. It was recognition. Amara reached him with sunlight on her gown, and no borrowed jewels at her throat. "You look," he said quietly, "like a woman who has decided where she belongs." Amara looked at the man who had asked for truth when everyone else had asked for performance. She looked at Sebastian standing straighter beside him, at the Duchess pretending not to be emotional, at the chapel filled with people who had once waited to see her humiliated, and now watched because the story had changed without their permission. "I decided that long before today," she whispered. The world was simply late in noticing. Nathaniel's smile was small and real. After the vows, after the blessing, after the first careful kiss that became less careful when Amra's hand tightened around his, they stepped out into the winter sunlight together. People would say she had been fortunate. They would say the forgotten sister had somehow won the Duke. They would say many things, because people always did. Amara no longer feared the shape of their sentences. She had been sent to Haramir House with a ring that was not hers, an apology that was not hers, and a disgrace that had never belonged to her. She had entered a room full of people waiting for her to lower her eyes, soften the truth, and carry someone else's shame politely back into the dark. Instead, she had returned the ring. She had kept the truth. And when the Duke asked her what she wanted, she had finally answered, as if her own life was something she was allowed to choose.